Hey, welcome back. I'm glad you're here and I hope you've been enjoying the content so far. I know it's a lot of information to take in and some of it takes time to work through and think about. But today we're going to dig in a little deeper and we're going to talk about getting back to basics. And that's to do with our music itself and where we're at and reevaluating maybe our skill level and our songwriting and a number of things, because let's face it, we've listened to the radio, we've listened to a lot of music in our life, and there's a lot of crappy, horrible music out there that we can't believe is on the radio. We can't believe that they're making money and that they're famous. Like, how is that even happening? How is that even possible? Well, the only reason that's possible and the only difference between crappy popular music and crappy indie music that no one's ever heard of is marketing and the money thrown at it. That's the only difference. So there might be a really terrible band that writes terrible music, but because they were on one of those big time labels, they had money thrown at them and at the project, and so that's why we're hearing it. And so but it bothers us, right? Like, hasn't it ever bothered you? It totally has bothered me when I've turned on the radio and I'm expecting to hear, the latest and the greatest, and it's something like awful. I'm going, who is gonna listen to this? And the only reason they're on there is because they've been kind of made popular artificially. They've been artificially inflated to be better than they are. And of course, we all know about studio magic, right? Singers who really aren't very good singers, but when they apply all the special effects and the auto-tune and this, that, and the other thing, suddenly they sound amazing. So that's really not what we're going to do, and we're not going to focus on how to artificially make ourselves better. We want to be as good as we possibly can in an organic way, and then improve our skill level, improve our songwriting. We want to improve our art in any way that we can, so that we can grow and become the best musicians possible. And that's just how you get die-hard fans, is it has to be good music. And it seems like an obvious thing to say, doesn't it? The music needs to be good. But it's actually not an obvious thing. There are people who think, well, it's the internet, it's YouTube, I can put out whatever. And you certainly can. But we're not everybody else. We're not average. We are here. We're in this course together. We're doing this together because we're not average. We're people who are determined to not just make this work for us, but we're going to excel at it, and we're going to make a living at it. We're going to do something that makes an impact, and it's going to last. So we're not doing what everybody else is doing. We're going to go that much further, and that involves improving our skills and taking a real honest look at what we're doing and our skill level and how good is our music. And I don't know if you're just a singer or you're a songwriter, where you're at, but we can all improve our skill level. And that's just like a lifetime journey kind of thing. It's not, just we're only going to focus on that for, a month or something. This is going to be an ongoing thing that we do for the rest of our lives. And in this new music industry, and I call it that because it's completely changed and everything's upside down and nothing is as it was before. In this new music industry, in the age of digital music and the internet and social media and email marketing and all these different things, in this age, we need to stand out. We need to have outstanding music so that we can stand out. And I just wanted to read to you the definition of what outstanding means. And I'm just looking at my iPhone right now, and I'm going to read you this definition. To be outstanding, it says prominent, conspicuous, striking, marked by superiority or distinction, excellent, distinguished, standing out, projecting, I think that is the goal, and that is something we all need to focus on when it comes to the new music industry. We have to be better. We have to be the most excellent version of ourselves. Now, this does not mean that you have to be the best in the world. This does not mean that we're necessarily comparing ourselves to everybody else. That's not what I'm talking about. When I say better, I'm not saying we need to be better than so-and-so or better than this other artist or best in the whole world. One example that I sometimes think about is Bob Dylan. And if you're significantly younger than me, you might not know who Bob Dylan was. He was like, you know, an artist that my dad listened to that I grew up, you know, listening to, a folk rock artist. And he wrote that song Like a Rolling Stone, you know, that was really famous. But Bob Dylan, for example, he's not the best in the world at anything. You know, he's not the greatest singer. A lot of people don't think he was a good singer at all. They thought he was a terrible singer, and he's been booed off a stage. And he's not really the greatest, but he owned his thing. He did his thing, and he knew who he was, and he owned it. You know what I'm saying? He was very good at being himself, and he was a great songwriter. He's still alive, so he is a great songwriter. And you know, his voice is not a typical singing voice, and a lot of people say, well, he's kind of half talking and half singing, whatever, that's not singing. And he had a lot of criticism, but he knew his audience, and he had a niche. You can call it a niche or whatever, but I like calling it a niche. He had a niche. He knew his own music, he knew his style, and he shocked people because he was originally a folk artist and was very good at folk music. And then one day he picked up an electric guitar and added rock to that, and people flipped out, and they were like, you can't do that. And he didn't care, he did it. And then that's when he wrote that famous song, Like a Rolling Stone, and the rest is history. So, you know, just when I say we need to be excellent, we need to be outstanding, we need to be better, a better version of ourselves, I am not saying that we need to be the best in the world. You just need to be the best at being you, and you need to be the best at your genre. You need to know who you are. You need to know your sound. You need to know your audience, and you need to know what makes you different. And being different is what's going to make you outstanding. And then a level of excellency. So the best quality that we can afford, the best performance that we can possibly do. You know, we really need to try hard. There's a generation of laziness, and nobody wants to play anything more. Everything's automated and it's auto-tuned. Nobody wants to actually put in the work and gain the skill in their voice. And I've been guilty of it before. I've just wanted to take a shortcut here and there. We need to not do that, because for one, it's kind of like cheating, and we're going to lose as a culture and as a society. We're going to lose amazing, beautiful art when we keep cheating and cutting corners. Like, that is not outstanding. That is not excellent. And excellence involves time and energy and skill. And skill requires dedication and a level of persistence and perseverance. And, you know, very good musicians, you know, there's all kinds of people out there, but most musicians have a level of character in them, because you know that they're dedicated and hardworking, and they often don't stop even when they're hungry and tired. They just keep going, so that you know there's a level of dedication there. And so when I talk about excellence, let's not compare ourselves to everybody else. Let's compare to ourselves and be a better version of ourselves, and our music, take it to the next level. So I want you to look at your skill level right now and think, where can I improve? And this is going to involve taking a look at some of your weaknesses. Now, if you are maybe not so confident in singing, you're going to need to record yourself and listen back and take an honest look and say, okay, I have some weaknesses here. Maybe I keep hitting my break and I need to, get stronger in my upper range. Or maybe your songwriting is a little weak and it needs to improve a little bit. And or maybe you feel like you're stuck in a rut and you keep writing the same song in 1,000 different ways, but it's like the same song and you can't get out of it. We've all been there. But it's about taking a look at, where am I at and how can I improve? Where are the areas that I could improve on and get to the next level? So I want you to take kind of an inventory of all the things you do. Do you play more than one instrument? Do you just sing? Do you write? What do you do? Take an inventory of your skills and of what you play and all the things that you do involving music. And then I want you to consider some areas that you believe you could use some work in and that you could improve. Maybe it's all areas. That's totally fine. And you're going to set some goals to improve on these things, and we'll do them in a systematic way. And one of those ways is, like we said before, talked about scheduling a weekly session for you to work on anything music related. Now, in these weekly sessions, now if you can afford to do it daily, please do. By all means, do this as much as possible. But for now, if you're really busy like I am, sometimes it's just a weekly session. And during that session, that's where you're going to practice those skills. Singing lessons or guitar lessons or focusing on writing. So I've got a worksheet for you so you can break out of writer's block if songwriting is really your thing. And we've all been there where we feel like we're writing the same thing over and over. We can't break out of those 4 chord progressions, or it sounds like the same song over and over. We need to get out of our comfort zone and just change of scenery and somehow write something new and fresh that we don't normally do. And anyways, I have a worksheet for you on that, full of all my best tips for breaking out of writer's block. I know it will help you. So now we're going to just shift a little bit, and I want to talk to you about when I mentioned before about Bob Dylan and his niche. This is a key and pivotal topic that we need to discuss and work through. Niches are your best friend, and I'm not just saying that, they really are. And in fact, the more weird and obscure your niche is, the more potential for actually making money. It's as counterintuitive as that seems. It's actually true. And the reason being is because if you're like a pop artist and you're trying to promote your music and your genre is just pop, that is like throwing a stone into a huge ocean, or like trying to like find a goldfish in a large sea. Like, it's too big. It's too big. No one's gonna find you. You're just gonna drown, and there's no way for you to stand out. I mean, it's very hard. So basically, the smaller the pond, the better your chances of being seen and found. So we want you to be in a very small pond where you're clearly seen, and where people who gravitate, the fans that gravitate to that small pond, are crazy about those kind of fish. They love it. They'll do anything to get their hands on it. And so they'll spend a lot of money on those favorite bands because they're crazy about them. As counterintuitive as it is to think to go so small into a tiny little niche of something weird or like obscure, it seems like, wouldn't that be like music suicide? Like who's going to listen to that? You would be shocked at the crazy fans that will do anything to get their hands on those bands because they love them. They found them because there's different, unique. They have a twist on something normal. There's your average mainstream music, and then you have a twist to it. Well, that now stands out. That's how we're going to stand out of the crowd. We don't want to be a needle in a haystack, and the internet is the haystack. YouTube is a haystack. How are we going to stand out? We need to be different. We need to have a twist on something normal. And I'm not saying your music can't be normal. I'm just saying it needs to have something fresh and different that sets you apart. It's really not hard to do. And one of the things we're going to do is go back to that first worksheet that you did where we talked about your original influences. Who were your original influences as a kid? Because whether you recognize it or not, those influences have directly affected you, and they still influence what you're doing right now. And whether you've totally gone into a different genre is irrelevant. It's kind of like branded you in a way, it's marked you in a way, and it's affected you, and all of those things are coming out. And so we're going to think about who are the bands we used to listen to, what are the bands that made a mark on us in our childhood, in our teens, and then what is influencing us right now as we're writing music right now and singing, playing our instruments, whatever. What's influencing us today? Because those are really relevant, and together some of those influences are amalgamating, and they're mixing together, and it's kind of forming what we're doing. And I mean, I hate to break it to you, but there really is nothing new under the sun, and I'm sure you know that. There's nothing new under the sun, but you know what we can do is kind of put together some fresh combinations of things that have already been done, but together they sound new, and they sound exciting, and it sounds different. So we're not really creating anything original per se, but it is original sounding because it's maybe not, no one has ever quite put the spin on it that we do. And of course, offering our own unique lyrics and our own unique voice and our songwriting, it does become an original thing. So I want you to take some time now and think about your direct influences and how that has affected your genre right now. Next, we're going to define for sure your primary genre. Okay, so this is the big umbrella genre that I was talking about, that is really the huge ocean that we don't really want to stay in, you know. But if you were to upload your music to iTunes, they do ask for that big primary genre. So we need to know what it is, so that when we upload it to these sites, Amazon and YouTube and so forth, it's a good idea to have, you know, the big umbrella genre. So that should be fairly easy for you to determine. Rock, pop, country, blues, classical, those big ones. And then from there, we're gonna go one level deeper, and that's going to be your secondary genre. And a lot of times, the big digital music platforms like iTunes give you that secondary genre opportunity to kind of classify it as a second thing, because they know artists have a horrible time just classifying their music. I hated that. I didn't know what I was for so long, and all those years I spent with my friend writing in the studio, I couldn't nail down my sound for years. I had no idea. I mean, I just liked so many things. And it was weird because, I mean, I fell in love with heavy metal, but I loved like new age music like Enya and Celtic stuff. And then I could like sing R&B if I really wanted to, and I could do it pretty good, but that just didn't feel like me. That wasn't really, I don't know if I could stay there, you know, even though it was fun. And I experimented a lot, and I think experimenting is good, and I would encourage you to experiment, but we don't want to experiment so much that we don't land anywhere. I think that would be a disadvantage to you. If people can't pin anything on you, if they're like, well, they do country and hip hop, you know, they do both. I mean, that's going to be too hard for people to connect the dots. However, if you combine them in a really weird way that was like maybe catchy, or I don't know, I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to do your art, but I'm just saying, don't try to do everything. Don't be a jack of all trades. That doesn't work for musicians. You do want to kind of hone in on what you know you're good at, and definitely focus on those areas, but we don't want to be all over the map. So pick a couple of styles. So maybe you're rock, but you like folk music. Well, folk rock, well, that's a thing. folk rock as a thing, and or like progressive or classical and pop, like they work together, and lots of people do them. So your secondary genre is going to be the primary genre with one twist, just one. So like I said, it would be classical music with a bit of pop influence, and there's lots of people who do that. So primary genre, umbrella genre. One below that is your secondary genre, which is a primary genre with a twist. Okay, and then we want to go even deeper than that. Now, usually most digital platforms at this point aren't going to have a third option for you to choose. This is going to be more for when we later go into marketing our music on YouTube, in Facebook ads, and in other places. These micro niches, and we go really deep into the rabbit hole here, that's where we really get our super fans, and that's a very exciting and lucrative thing, and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing with that, even with my own career right now. It's a lot of fun. So what we want to do is, after you determined your umbrella genre, your secondary genre, we're going to now get into your niche. And your niche is probably 2 twists. So it's a primary genre with 2 twists. So now we're getting a little more specific, and the pond just got significantly smaller. And that might feel a little weird and scary, thinking like, oh, I'm like isolating myself, or I'm, ostracizing these fans over here and those fans over there. But that's okay. And this is about, again, knowing who you are. We're not really trying to go for what we think is going to make the most money. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be you. It needs to be about what you're all about and your music is all about. But it's about focusing on identifying what it is. So we're just identifying it. And then, if you're at the point where you're just like, I don't know what my niche is, that's okay. That just means we need to develop your sound a little more. You need to spend a little more time listening to those other influences. I think you need to go back to maybe some of your childhood influences and listen to them. Maybe you haven't heard them in like 15 years or something. You should go back and listen to them one afternoon and be like, I remember now why that inspired me, and it's affected a lot of my other music. And listen to all your current music that's in your iPod or on iTunes, and listen to and observe, why do I like this music? What is it about this music that really attracts me to it? Is it the instrumentation? Is it the vocals? Is it the songwriting? What is it about it? And you can be sure that those things have affected your songwriting in your music right now, or what you're trying to achieve, what you want to achieve. And the same with your childhood influences. It's all affected you. So if you're not sure what your niche is yet, I think it's just a matter of time, and you spending the time and going through these questions and these worksheets, and it will come to you. And what you can do is also go to Wikipedia or Amazon, and when you do a search for these bands, it will tell you what genre and what their niche genre is. Sometimes it's just broad, but a lot of times it will make mention of maybe a different micro niche that they've been involved in, or that they were known for once upon a time. And that might give you a very good idea of where you're headed, or where maybe you might fit in, since they have influenced you. So finding your genre, and eventually your niche, and then your micro niche eventually, is going to be so important. Like I said, not just for uploading our music to digital platforms, but when we go to market your music, and even for uploading it on YouTube. Now, in your worksheet, I have a whole bunch of questions going through how to determine this. And you're going to make a list of all the bands that have influenced you and are influencing you right now. And you're going to write down what their primary genre is and their secondary genre, and any niche that you can identify, you're going to write all those down, because that's going to start jogging your memory, and it's going to start getting your brain working. Your wheels are going to start turning, and you're going to start thinking about maybe I fit into one of those, or maybe that particular niche has influenced me, and it's gonna give you ideas. If you don't already know off the top of your head what you are, it's gonna give you ideas, and then you're gonna really keep that list handy, because later on when we go to upload your music to YouTube and other platforms, we are going to tag some of those genres and secondary genres and niches and micro niches and some of those little tiny bands that only have a few die-hard followers. We're going to tag some of those bands and those songs and musicians in your YouTube videos, and then you get those crazy fans that love that genre, that will spend all their money on that genre. They're going to find your video, and there's going to be a whole lot more on that we'll get into later, but I'm telling you that this is part of the foundation of how we find your super fans in the future. And it all comes back to your foundation, where you've come from, where you're at now, and where you're going. The influences that have affected you in the past, in the present, and in the future. And it's all a part of us developing our music career online. And I know you're going to kill this. You're going to rock it. It's going to be awesome. And I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.